He used to be kind of known as the top lane Nidalee one trick. He has been known to play a decent amount of Jace. The Rumble was also something that came into play, and if this is going to be something of the re-emerging top laners, Rumble may wind up coming up in priority. He's seen some changes in the previous patch. He might not be necessarily as strong, but as we hop into picks and bans for game number 1, we'll see what exactly Big Gods, Jackals, and both eUnited are going to be doing on 7-14.
Right, I mean, 7-14, we highlighted a bunch of the item changes, but that's not all there was. There were a ton of champion changes. Not a ton of top-tier picks getting hit that hard. I mean, Caitlyn received some super minor nerfs and stuff like that, but then there were a lot of big changes on some other champions. Cho'Gath and Singed receiving huge updates in their passives and actual spells, respectively. So, gonna have to keep our eye out for exactly what's gonna be picked here.
Yeah, and of course the rise of the tank junglers has kind of been happening in 7-13, and with some buffs to, like you mentioned, Cho'Gath, and we've seen more Sejuani being played recently as well. The new Thornmail remake makes it very, very key. So when lethality rises and the Thornmail rises, we'll see which one prevails. But so far, the bans seem pretty standard here. Galio, Elise, Zac being banned away. eUnited has also decided to ban away the Corki from Peek and Move. It's something he's historically been very, very good at playing. But the Vladimir ban coming in from Big Gods Jackals too, specifically targeted at GVN.
A little surprising to see that one in the first rotation of bans. You think they might go for something else. Also, the Rek'Sai ban. So we see a lot of focus down on them, and then the first pick, Cho'Gath. A lot of people have been tweeting about it. I saw some tweets out of Lorlo on Team Liquid saying that, you know, please stop banning it. Let me just try to play Cho'Gath top. So what the change was the E went from a toggle ability that does just AoE on all your auto attacks to an empowered ability that you have to activate and then make sure your next 3 auto attacks deal now some bonus health, maximum health damage, as well as applying a slow on them. So he's a lot stronger. You might see him in the jungle or the top lane. I've heard of both. And then the other one that we talked about potentially being strong on this patch, Jace, also locked in right away for Big Gods Jackals.
Yeah, and no surprise with RF Legendary being subbed in, the Jace priority absolutely rises. We did see Chris playing a decent amount of that throughout the Challenger split as well. But this one will be taken most likely by Big Gods Jackals top lane. We'll have to see as the rest of the pick and ban phase kind of goes through. But also Caitlyn being hovered now and will be locked in by Big Gods Jackals. Despite her seeing a lot of kind of priority nerfs and lowering and banning and everything, she's still first rotation priority here for Big Gods.
Yeah, I mean, the nerf was so minor. It's a 2% attack speed per level nerf, I believe it was. So overall, pretty minor nerf. And I think it's the kind of thing where you can still take her early on. She still has that pushing power. Then in the late game, she has the massive zone control with the traps and the headshots and all that comes with her. So a great pickup here. And it was a little surprising to see Big Gods Jackals take are not banned on red side. That's something you used to see, but I think maybe they kind of predicted this higher priority on something like the Cho'Gath and some of these other new champions, and they expected it to fall through onto the red side.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the side of eUnited are going to be picking up some interesting picks for themselves. Kha'Zix now with the lethality back into his favor, can emerge out of the jungle. You know, he's not necessarily the tanky guy that we expecting to see. However, he was a priority pick previously. We're going to see him again. And then the Alistar coming in as a support option here for Zeyzal. That's also something that was touched very minorly kind of in 7-14. The damage reduction on his ultimate was kind of changed around a little bit, and he's seen a little bit more priority breaking through in the bot lane along the side of Braum, Tahm Kench, and the other tank support.
It is surprising to see it blind, though, especially you only see the Caitlyn, really, and until you secure a good AD carry matchup, who knows if the Alistar is going to work out for them. Big Gods takes the Gragas, one of the strongest tank junglers on the patch, which you're probably going to want if the Jace is going topside, because you won't get any beef up there. But what this is scary is that Big Gods Jackals now bans out the Kalista intelligently, not wanting to give up the Alistar Kalista, which was such a formidable level 6 all-in previously, so that's out. And now if you're eUnited, it's what AD carry you're going to be able to go with. Some of the lethality builders do have decent matchups into Caitlyn, though I would never say that they win the matchup. And then you already have one of the weaker supports in lane with the Alistar.
Yeah, well, we did wind up seeing Jhin rise in priority recently. He was one of those kind of lethality go-tos. The Varus has kind of hovered kind of as one of the go-to pickups in the bot lane meta for a while. So we'll see if that one winds up getting locked in here. But the side of eUnited have kind of banned out a little bit of both from the remaining champion pool. They banned away the Ahri, which is not necessarily a high priority pickup specifically for Peek and Woof, but they've also banned away the Bard coming out from Bayana, which has been a big playmaking champion out of a big playmaking player for Big Gods Jackal.
And there's still a fair amount of playmaking supports up, though. You might see a Thresh, something like that has not been picked yet. It looks like they are going to go with the Braum instead, wanting to get a little bit more of a front line in, as well as already kind of having the lane under control. Braum's a fine laner in his own right, especially into Alistar, but he provides a lot of utility in the late game as well. So overall, it looks like Big Gods Jackals do have a lot of winning lanes already secured. And then they are going to, save their last pick for mid, assuming that they get a counter pick there. They could end up with 3 winning lanes potentially.
Yeah, I mean, things like Syndra are still on the table, who are very high massive damage AP threats out of the mid lane, since they do have a lot of AD-centric on their team with the Jace in the top lane. But they also have a lot of long-range poke potential, which is something that a mid laner like Peek and Move would slot into extremely well. So we'll see what they wind up riding out their composition with. Meanwhile, on the eUnited side, definitely going for a little bit more of the tried-and-true bot lane pick. Ashe has been kind of one of the go-to initiators from that bottom lane ADC marksman role, and one of the staples for definitely, too. Very popular pick into the Caitlyn, a very good lane pick.
That's what I was going to say. It's kind of his bread and butter champion down there. He is very accurate with his ultimates, a fine laner, able to get a lot of leads for himself. And so you see this team comp of eUnited, a little bit of a 4-1 setup. Obviously, Cho'Gath is not a great split pusher, so he'll probably group up a little bit more with the team. The LeBlanc is going to go probably split into a side lane and try and make stuff happen. And then you have definitely potentially initiating fights with the ultimate, and Kha'Zix's kind of running around trying to hope there's a lot of chaos. You can find some pickoffs.
Yeah, so eUnited may be trying to play to the fact that, what we saw on the full screen graphic earlier, that they do have very strong individual players and trying to prey upon more chaotic kind of fights. As Big Gods Jackals will lock in that Syndra for Peek and Move in the mid lane, they definitely kind of have more of a cohesive unit. They have a very strong front line, they have high damage in the back line, and as you mentioned, very powerful winning lane matchups.
Yeah, once again, Big God Jackals can also go for that 4-1 split with that Jace, but both teams, they went with a couple new things on the patch, like we were saying. We got to see the Jace lock in early, as well as the Cho'Gath. Obviously, that is the matchup I am most excited for, given that these are 2 new champions a little bit with all the changes that came in. So we'll definitely have to keep our eye up there. And then it's going to be about which of those 2 solo laners gets further ahead of the other one. If the Jace is snowballing, maybe the LeBlanc has a harder time matching him, and the same thing's true in reverse. If the LeBlanc can get going, then you might see Jace have a hard time in the side lane.
And it's been a very long time since we've seen a Cho'Gath on Summoner's Rift to begin with, let alone one into a Jace matchup here, as we are going to be loading into game number 1 here of our North American Challenger Series Summer Semifinals. eUnited, the number 1 seed, coming into this matchup against Big Gods Jackals on the red side, who are the number 4 seed. If you think you're having deja vu, no, we're not playing a VOD from last week. These 2 teams did match up just last week. eUnited took the 2-0 victory. Big Gods Jackals, though, they kind of stuck to their tried and true. eUnited have a little bit of room for flexibility here with some of the new picks, some of the new stuff on 7-14, and the fact they do come in here as heavy favorites.
It is the kind of funny that they played last week, and you're thinking, all right, maybe I'm getting some data on my opponent, knowing what they prioritize and things like that, but then you go into the week with a completely new patch, you lose a lot of that kind of information you might have been able to scout out from that series that didn't matter a ton in the last week of the regular season. Obviously, United need to win it to be able to secure that first round or first place seed in the playoffs, but didn't need to show that much, and with a new patch, obviously you're going to be able to surprise your opponents.
Yeah, Big Gods Jackals have a little bit of surprise in their own right. The fact that they've subbed in RF Legendary, the fact that they were able to prioritize the Jace pick over pretty much anything else because they have RF in the top side of the map. And as you mentioned before, he was known a little bit as like a Nidalee one-trick player. Then he started picking up the Rumble and the Jace. One of the things that we do know that RF was lacking last time we saw him in the Challenger Series was that teleport play. So if they do get into a 4-1 split push scenario, it's really going to be on what has RF learned from his time kind of on the, riding the bench for Big Gods Jackals, and how is he going to apply it.
So a little different start here out of eUnited, actually giving Dandy the leash on blue buff. Usually you see people start around mid. LeBlanc not very good for giving a leash on the bot side, and I guess eUnited's bot lane didn't want to give up the leash either or something, so they decided to start on the top side with Dandy. Obviously, Kha'Zix's a champion that can spam ability, sometimes runs low if you are casting your spells all the time, so I can kind of understand a blue buff start here. The question is, does RF Legendary know that? Because if you know the Kha'Zix is clearing down to the bot side as Jace, you can start playing super aggressive early on. That's kind of what he's already doing.
Yeah, we see RF utilizing a bit of the range advantage over Licorice's very tiny Cho'Gath, although we will potentially get to see a very large Cho'Gath in the late game, because haven't seen competitive play on him since that changes.
Right, I mean, that's definitely something worth pointing out now that his ultimate can stack infinitely with champions eaten. So he can get pretty big up on the top side, and that's something to keep your eye on as we go later in the game. Like you said, I don't think we've seen a Cho'Gath since that has come through in competitive play.
Don't think so. It'll be very interesting to cast on the play-by-play side. If there's a giant Cho'Gath taking up half of my screen, so you might have to bear with me on that one.
A little bit of a learning curve for everyone involved here.
Well, it looks like now that Dandy, utilizing that blue buff start, is going to be invading on the bottom side here. Sir T has just gotten the blue buff for himself. Already used the smite to heal off of the wolves. Dandy's going to get leapt on there. Sir T has to flash away with a flash follow from Dandy. First blood secured for Kha'Zix.
Excellent coordination there on the side of eUnited, able to use the Ashe to potentially scout out the the Gragas positioning and his health, knowing that it's pretty low. Now, Fabi caught a little out of position. Zazel going to chunk him out, but really smart play overall. Dandy's going to have to give himself the execute here, not able to get out after that kill, but something you're pretty happy with. Get this Kha'Zix snowballing. Don't give the enemy team anything to work with off of it. No double buffs going over to a lane or anything bad. And here you see Dandy knows he's on these wolves. They had already caught vision of him, and he's going to be able to get this kill. Surti trying to wait for the last possible moment to get this flash. Maybe could have flashed a little bit earlier instead of giving Dandy time for the cooldown and sneaking an auto or two more. If he flashed that wall right away, I doubt Dandy follows. Who knows exactly, because then Dandy just gets a free flash out and can continue invading aggressively. A little bit of a lose-lose situation there.
Yeah, so Dandy already getting things going for eUnited in the early game here. And last week, it was kind of a matchup of eUnited taking early game leads and just riding them out into victory. It was really Big God's Jackals who were trying to capitalize on any sort of mistakes eUnited were going to make. Game number 1, there weren't very many mistakes from eUnited. Game number 2, however, is where Big God's Jackals was able to come back into the game, kind of get themselves out to an advantage, but it was really on Fabi in the bottom lane, using that Tristana, getting into the later stages of the game. But Zazel on a pick champion, specifically the Morgana, was the reason that eUnited was able to come back.
And here's Dandy trying to live in Surti's jungle. They have some deep wards down there early on. They spot him coming. Dandy sits, cuts him off from his Raptor camp, chunks him out a little bit. This is that kind of 4:30 time you hear a lot of people talking about, where you want to get on top of their Raptor camps right as they spawn, because you can know the enemy team started there. Dandy wins the smite fight, is able to hit 4 off this camp. Some very aggressive and effective counter jungling out of the import player early on. Yeah,
and we saw Dandy at 5 CS when he invaded Surti for first blood early on, got executed and just immediately upgraded to that tracker's knife, went into the jungle, put the wards down, and spotted out Surti again. Wasn't afraid to get up close and personal, despite a small level experience advantage for at least a little bit of time for Surti, because he has that pressure from GBM in the mid lane. We see Peek and Move being forced under tower here by GBM on this LeBlanc, continuously poking him down, going in and getting him low, and Dandy might be looking for a little bit of a fancy tower dive. The minion wave's pushed up. We'll have to see who wants it going in first. Dandy's going to leap in, gets the flash out of Peek and Move GBM. Is he going to flash after? He will,
oh,
but
it's a minion.
He changed the minion, and Peek and Move's going to be able to... Oh, he goes back in! GBM's going to pick up a kill anyway. It's gifted over to him.
Peek and Wolf not quite tracking the cooldowns of the enemy mid laner. The fact that GBM went for the E instead of the W right away to proc the passive that was on the Syndra maybe made him think that the W was going to be on cooldown for a little bit longer. The E hits the minion. Peek and Wolf thinks he's safe. He starts walking back forwards and ends up getting W right on top of with the auto attack finishing off.
Yeah, the same exact time we panned down the bomb, saw Zazel getting chunked down a little bit. This is Peek and Move looked like he got away, but then kind of turns back around.
Yeah, so you see him go for the flash E instead of the flash W, which I think kind of telegraphed to Peek and Wolf that he would have been fine, but he walks back forward, he thinks he's safe, takes the W back in, gets the Q auto attack off, and that's all she wrote.
So another kill going on to the side of eUnited, and very, very strong mid lane champion as well from GBM. We haven't necessarily seen him pick up LeBlanc all too often. I mean, LeBlanc had kind of been banned away a lot. And actually, we're going to wind up seeing a dive going down to RF Legendary. Has to try to flash away, but Danny continuing to get things done. And
whoa,
looks like there was a pause in the game, so we're going to have to cut out of the action right there. Don't know if RF Legendary lives or not. Yeah.
Gotta give some credit to Danny, though, during this pause, to be surprised at how aggressive he's being early on. He traded his flash in that initial kill that he got. And usually what some people do when they lose that flash is they go, all right, well, I got to start playing a little safer, because if I get caught out during an invade, I might just get collapsed on and killed. But Dandy not letting up at all, keeps his foot firmly on the pedal to keep going forward, and he's already made one dive around the mid lane, and looks like he might turn another one on the top side right now.
Yeah, well, we mentioned the GBM kind of just putting the pressure on Peek and Move in the mid lane, and saying that the GBM hasn't played a lot of LeBlanc. He's, it's kind of been a priority ban on the North American side of things. We went to Rift Rivals, saw EU letting it through, and they kind of paid the price for that. They lost the entire event, so there was that. But the LeBlanc too has not really been a GBM style of champion. We're used to seeing like Phoenix and Fly play like the roaming champion once they got these lane advantages, but GBM was kind of known as like a safe farmer, not necessarily known for moving around the map on that champion.
Well, especially, even forgetting laning phase, out of lane, the fact that it's a more of a 1-3-1 style champion is something that I don't think we associate with GBM at all. He's known for being a great team fighter, like you said, farm up early on, but then when you get into the late game, his role for the most part, when he's playing the Vladimir and things like that, is go dive onto the backline and take those 5v5 situations. On the LeBlanc pick, completely different. Sure, you still kind of dive in, but you have to play those very, very carefully. You can't really just dive through a front line quite like a Vladimir can. and then you're also should be spending the vast majority of your time just in a side lane by yourself.
Right, and we saw him when he was playing the Talia, something we also hadn't seen him play a lot when he was in that split push scenario, not necessarily in kind of his positioning and team fight kind of, GBM meta style. He was struggling to find pickoffs utilizing that Weaver's Wall. He was kind of struggling in sort of these split push scenarios where he didn't necessarily understand how strong he was in that 1v1 situation. And that was, against Big God's Jackals just last week.
Right, and Talia as a split pusher is not the LeBlanc type even, where LeBlanc's going in and looking for kills and really chunking people out, whereas Talia kind of just wants to shove you in and then go roam around a lot more and try and use, like you said, that Weaver's Wall to cut people off, cut them off from objectives, whatever it is. And while he was struggling in that style, maybe the LeBlanc is a little bit more a style because GBM, we always talk about the laning phase being kind of a slow for him. But then once he gets out of laning phase, he gets really, really bloodthirsty. He goes crazy on those backlines. That's why he drew a Vladimir ban in the first rotation, because that champion is just so scary for them. So I can understand maybe LeBlanc does play to that a little bit better than Talia.
Yeah, well, speaking of just the bloodthirst coming out from eUnited in this early game, we've already praised Dandy kind of for what he's been able to do on the Kha'Zix so far. But more importantly, we focused down on his opponent, specifically in Sir T for first blood. Then he wound up diving mid lane. Now he's focusing down on RF Legendary on the top side of the map. Big God's Jackals in their series against eUnited last week, their saving grace was Fabi on the bottom side of the map, but definitely in Zays were kind of able to keep them even if not slightly ahead throughout the laning phase. And Dandy on this Kha'Zix pick now seems to be unlocked to really get those solo lanes across the map snowballing.
And that's the big thing. We were talking about, the Jace to LeBlanc, who's going to get further ahead. If Dandy actually executes this dive up on the top side, that was a pretty big minion wave. You deny that from RF Legendary. You already got a kill for your LeBlanc now, so you set their top laner behind, you get your mid laner ahead, and then you're basically have given your team the late game already by ensuring that your split pusher is going to be stronger than theirs.
Right, and we also don't necessarily know how strong the Cho'Gath is going to be in that situation, too. We mentioned that Jace, very early game lane dominant champion, really needs those advantages to kind of keep him ahead in that split push later stage of the game. And if you know anything about top lane tanks, sure, we haven't seen a lot of Cho'Gath in competitive play recently, but you think of things that you can compare it to, like when top lane Gragas was a thing, when Nautilus was a thing, when Maokai was a thing. They become these immovable forces that eventually will be knocking down, your doors in these split push scenarios, and then utilizing the teleport play into fights to really get these flanks off. Cho'Gath also has the silence, too, that can really turn team fights around with teleport.
Yeah, but the thing that Cho'Gath lacks, a lot of those premier tanks did last season, was they had guaranteed lockdown CC. The Nautilus ultimate, the Maokai W, the Poppy E, all these things are point-and-click abilities that are going to lock them up for you. On the side of Cho'Gath, that Q is notoriously difficult to land. The Rupture, yeah, people miss that all the time. The silence is relatively short range, so it can be a little bit hard for Cho'Gath to really get something off that TP flank, because he's still going to be needing to hit a skill shot. Whereas everyone else, if you land that good TP flank, you have something guaranteed to lock down a backline member.
He kind of the way you're describing it kind of makes you feel like the Renekton's. Like Renekton does wind up having the slice and dice to get into fights, but we see a lot of teleport plays when the Renekton has flash. We're like, oh, the engagement tool for them is the flash and then the Call the Meek stun. That's never gonna land, and then it lands all the time in Challenger Series. Cho'Gath kind of has the makeup where he doesn't have a lockdown button, but he does have a delete button for his ulti.
That's 100% true. The ultimate it is a point and click. It does true damage. It messes people up. It might be able to turn some kills. You don't need to CC them with anything but death, right?
Exactly. Best CC.
But that said, people, assuming that he's gotten enough games on this Cho'Gath, because it has been banned a fair amount in solo queue, if he's gotten enough practice on it, then there's no reason to say he can't land these ruptures. You do have a relatively immobile mid laner in the Syndra who might fall prone to this kind of stuff. So he might find some people that he can kind of knock up with his rupture. The other thing worth talking about with Cho'Gath, of course, that people tend to forget is his passive, the immense amount of sustain it gives him in lane. He has been, there has been a fair amount of pressure on the top side of the map with all the invades from Dandy, but we saw him just with a Doran shield and a potion still on him, basically at full health, surviving some of that early Jace harass. As long as he's able to kind of get some last hits on minions, he has a ton of sustain with that new Doran shield.
Yeah, and we've been kind of focusing down on what eUnited has brought to the table, because they're the ones making moves in the early game here, and they're the ones that actually, have some pretty exciting things that we're seeing for like the first time here on 7-14. But Big God's Jackals, they're on the back foot again. One of the things that we lamented about their series against eUnited last week was the fact that they consistently fell behind in the early game, and they always felt like that while they were making proactive plays and going for fights and trying to catch people out of position, they weren't able to capitalize as much as they could have because they were so far behind early game.
I think that's the thing for Big Goss Jackals is you have to give yourself a chance in the early game. We talked about them getting some potentially winning lanes. The LeBlanc being picked up and the Syndra, it's much more of a skill match, of course. But the top lane should be winning, and it looks like right now that's already getting turned in the dive. So overall, I like the idea that they went for, picking a lot of really individually strong champions and hoping Sir T can probably get involved and snowball some of them. But it's just that he got held down so early on. Then Dandy's put out so much pressure. It is hard for Big Goss Jackals to find a chance to make one of these big plays to really cement themselves a lead in one of the lanes.
Yeah, and it also seems like the big gods may kind of just fall back to their backup plan of eventually Fabi will get strong enough where he can carry. They have a Braum, they have a Gragas, they have 2 tanks that can provide a very powerful front line. They have a Syndra who, although she's behind right now, still puts out a lot of damage. They have a Jace that can put out some damage and potentially put some split push pressure down. But if you're Big Gods Jackals, you tried this twice already during the regular season against Big Gods Jackals, against eUnited, you weren't able to take a game off of them.
And the thing is, Caitlyn's not a very autonomous champion in the sense where it's like, all right, well, you got fed on a Lucian, put him on a side lane, maybe you can 1v1 somebody. Caitlyn, from ahead, is still mostly about control and setting up the traps and all this and that. And LeBlanc can ignore that. She doesn't need to go where the Caitlyn is. She can go into a side lane. If Caitlyn tries to go there, she just goes somewhere else. So there's a lot less stuff like that. As it looks like we're going to get back into the game in a moment here. The dive comes in.
Ooh.
They get the kill.
Yeah, Licorice is barely going to survive through that dive, and they are actually able to capitalize by picking up the kill on RF Legendary. A second kill going over to Dandy's Cosmics.
And like we said, the big thing about this was getting kind of a shutdown onto this Jace, misses out on some of that CS and XP. The next wave crashed into the turret as well. It's nice that Sir T is up there to be able to grab that. But this is a bit of a disastrous start. Already 1,500 gold advantage for eUnited just 7 minutes into the game. And it's where those gold advantages are. It's on Dandy, it's on Licorice, and it's on GBM.
And if you see here a replay of that dive, as there's a pause in the middle of it. RF Legendary trying his darndest to survive throughout that dive. Almost takes down Licorice, but Dandy at this Kha'Zix just a little bit too much damage on the isolation.
You saw the Eat come in out of Licorice. Didn't actually get the kill, so he doesn't get any bigger off of it. Just able to throw in that damage to make sure that Dandy is able to secure the kill. As GBM continues to win trades aggressively in the mid lane.
Definitely sending a hawk shot cross map. Sees his mid laner going in upon the opposing mid laner. Also scouts out where Sir T is going to be over by his red buff. So with the added vision information, we'll see if eUnited are going to be continuing this proactive play. There's a Mountain Dragon on the map, but GBM getting super aggressive here. Takes the full unleashed power from Syndra and still survives.
Just no safety there. Pingwolf's flash up, but was so low, and GBM comes up as well. Here we see the bot lane kicking things off as well.
As soon as definitely hits level 60, Channel Crystal Arrow comes out. Zazel's trying to follow up some stun, but Bayano puts up the Unbreakable Shield, going to continue to mitigate that damage. But this minion wave is shoving up, and Dandy's on the backside.
Yeah, they get the heal out. They drop a ward down. They do have the teleport advantage as Legendary went top. There's the knock-up Rupture, and you're going to get a kill.
Ooh, and Licorice is going to get a stack on his Cho'Gath Feast ultimate from that one. Not only did they munch down on Caitlyn, but that was the person who was left at full health after that trade. Bayano just ditched.
We are in full snowball mode here, Tom. They get the teleport advantage from the gank on the top side. As soon as they see that they get that, they instantly transition their bot lane, or transition that advantage down to their bot lane with that TP play. And all of that's made even easier by the fact that GBM is winning mid lane as well, so they don't have to worry about a potential Syndra roam coming for cleanup. Complete domination of the early game here by eUnited.
Yep, we see Dandy going for the upgraded Q on his Kha'Zix claws. We see the bottom lane here, like I said, as soon as definitely gets level 6, he shoots out the Enchanter Crystal Arrow, and they see a low HP Braum.
And this isn't that bad of an idea. You might think, well, why not save the ultimate for this dive that's coming in, and then you can really chain CC somebody. But you can just start that off early, given the immense advantage that they had, and then teleport in. You see that they try and get the traps down, but the Rupture, relatively long range. Fabi does not have his flash here, and so they're able to get that easy kill. And there you see the Cho'Gath beginning to get a little bit bigger.
Yep, his size is slowly growing, as is the lead that eUnited has in this early game. Already about 2,000 gold in their favor. We see they did not transition that into trying to take the first Drake of the game. A Mountain Drake is spawned on the map, but instead stole the blue buff away. So continuing to beat down upon Sir T and steal that jungle away.
I assume that that disconnect there was what we saw that pause about. These guys still a little bit ahead of the broadcast in terms of actual playing time towards viewing time. So he, as you see, RF Legendary was still moving around just fine, not actually disconnected from the game.
Well, maybe that was the excuse for having not the teleport available when it going onto the top side of the map. But That was, of course, because of the dive that happened. He had to teleport back up. Like you said, there's a huge minion wave he missed out on as soon as they had the teleport advantage. That was another reason why that dive on the bottom side was so successful. Just the fact that eUnited, I mean, the early game has always been extremely strong, but their team cohesion, specifically between Licorice in the top lane and then, you know, his duo of former rookies now in their second split, their sophomore split of Challenger Series on the bottom side, have always kind of had this really good team communication between them.
I think that's the biggest surprise out of eUnited was the fact that they found such a solid native core with these rookies last split. That was one of the things that a lot of people, when they saw this roster, were saying, oh, well, who are these guys? Are they going to be able to match up to the European imports? And obviously they can as they make another dive on the top side.
Yeah, we see the Scream come out to silence RF Legendary, and he gets chomped down upon by Licorice, picking up his second kill of the game on this Cho'Gath, making it look pretty good.
Yeah, Dandy completely running over this game, involved in almost every single kill aside for that one mid lane solo kill. Also going to help his team get first turret of the game here as Licorice picks this one up. A great performance out of them early on.
And that is not what you want to see if you're Big God Jackals. Your top lane pick that you prioritize first in your champion select rotation. So, you know, the second pick of overall of the drops into your red side. You sub in RF Legendary, you give him a comfort pickup, you put him against Licorice, who was one of the standout players in the Challenger Series last split and one of the main factors of eUnited to really get things going, and he falls behind early on. He dies to Dandy in a dive, which you can't really fault him for in a 2v1 situation. You tried his best, but you didn't get the advantages out of that pick that you wanted to in the early game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing is Jace is a snowball-oriented pick. You need to be getting CS leads on your own, maybe dives if you receive some jungler attention, taking that turret down on your own eventually in a pushing situation, and just nothing like that has happened. He's fallen completely behind. Already a Righteous Glory completed on the side of Licorice, wants to speed himself in range to be able to chomp down on some people. And like we said, already a 4,000 gold advantage. With a team that should have had a gold lead in the early game based off the laning phase, or the champions they picked for the laning phase.
So Big God's Jackals, troubles in the laning phase. Seeing if they can rely on their later game side of Fab. You see Sir T trying to get a catch on to Danny, utilized the body slam flash a little early and the explosive cast. Didn't necessarily have the support of Bayana on Peekaboo quite yet, and Dandy doesn't even have to blow a summoner spell.
Here's
Just walks away, but Zazel, good headbutt, pulverize, lands on two. Bayana's gonna get locked up with an enchanted crystal arrow, and the Braum ultimate will not be enough to stop anybody. Zazel picks up a kill for himself. Licorice on the top side just solo chomps down onto RF Legendary. This is a massacre.
This is a massacre. Zazel wants to get involved with it. He got his own kill. Definitely the only one not quite on the board for a kill yet. As we see Licorice continue to snowball up on that top side. Very difficult for Jace. We were talking about the immobility of Syndra. Same thing for Jace. One of the things he does best against melee matchups is that when they use their gap closers to go aggressive on Mess. Hold up. Might see a solo kill in the mid lane.
Whew, almost.
The best thing about Jace when he's getting engaged on by a melee champion is that he can use his knockback to create some distance. But against Cho'Gath, he doesn't really have a gap closer. The Rupture, the CC ability, does not actually need Licorice to be next to him. There you see with that Righteous Glory, the immense amount of chase down potential, gets the knockback. But here's the Rupture again, lands, sets up the ultimate bite, gets him right there. And that's what I was saying is that, you know, Jace can knock Cho'Gath back, but that doesn't actually take him out of the threat range of the CC.
And you see the Righteous Glory being applied extremely early. So while Licorice continues to do Licorice things on the top side of the map, Dandy nets himself another kill. This time it was the Mountain Drake being taken for the side of eUnited. So they do want to getting that first Drake for themselves, which will help them knock out this outer ring of towers, which might be time to knock down considering they've gotten themselves this gold lead significantly just off the fact they have all these kills.
So, Tom, you and I always debate things about perfect games and all that, and I know it's a little bit early to say that this might happen, but the question right now is the Kazakhs giving up the kill as Peekaboo gets chunked out once again. The Kazakhs going for a suicide to deny a kill. It does show up on the scoreboard as a death. Does that ruin the perfect game?
Man, that's...
Because it's the right decision to go for the execute, huh?
I feel like I should know the answer to this question, but I don't. It doesn't pop up as a kill for Big Gods on the scoreboard,
right.
So... it's kind of like, it's like a complete game, I think.
I would still call it a perfect game because he did the right thing, and he did not give Big God Jackals an advantage.
I know Jat was very interested in what Twitter and Reddit thought about this one, so maybe we'll have to ask him after this game, but...
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, if eUnited continues to play they are right now, we might not have to wait very long, although this is a best-of-5 series. So now that eUnited has kind of shown some new picks, we'll see if Big God's Jackals can adapt to what they've kind of put on the table here in 7-14. But then it also raises the question of eUnited is just doing this with brand new picks. Why can't they do it with the things they played the entire split?
That's the thing is that we talk about, you know, it's 7-14, new patch, all this cool new stuff. But at the same time, LeBlanc's been strong for a long time. It just hasn't been a GBM-style champion. He breaks it out here. You probably are not prepared for him to take that champion. and right away you see the strength of it. And it's the kind of thing where now all of a sudden you have to add a new priority ban potentially, as well as this Cho'Gath. If you don't play it, Peek Wolf almost goes down once again, constantly getting chunked out. The bot lane turret getting low, but it looks like Zeyzal wants to start something off.
Yeah, bottom lane here for Big God Jackals is still maybe a little bit of a rough as they're continuing to push forward down onto the side of eUnited, but still, Zeyzal on this Alistar pickup. I mean, we haven't necessarily mentioned even a lot about the Alistar. We've seen Zeyzal utilizing his boost mobility early on. He's gone for the Ancient Coin line, which no longer gives you that extra kind of, the extra skill point when you complete the quest. Instead, you give allies bonus movement speed when they're running towards you, kind of like your mini point runner passive.
Yeah, a little Janna passive as well.
Yeah, so being able to utilize that for the engagement, being able to utilize that with this Cho'Gath who doesn't necessarily have a gap closer. And the fact of the matter is, he's already engaged combined with Deathleaf Ashe, and they haven't even made it out of lane phase yet.
I mean, that's the thing is Fabi in the bot lane has actually done a good job of getting that turret down low, but with the complete loss of pressure in the jungle, top, and mid lane, it's very hard to just kind of set up that 2v2 and continue pushing in. You see, once again, they have to vacate the bottom lane because Dandy just completely unafraid of Sir T, runs into the bottom jungle, throws a ward behind. Licorice can TP in as he's already really, really tanky as this top laner just 15 minutes in the game. So the bot lane has to leave the bottom turret, and now Deftly is able to grab this one for free just from the spillover from the other lanes.
And so if you're Big God Jackals, you're hard-pressed to find out how you're going to get back into this game. One of the things you can do is potentially make some forced proactive plays in the mid lane, but eUnited, they sipped this one out. Even though they were standing on a ward, they just dissuade Big Gods from trying to get anything done on GBM in the mid lane.
Yeah, both teams kind of going for a little bit of a bait there, hoping the other guy opens up on their mid lane and they can collapse in, but both teams have the same idea. Both teams back out. GBM continuing trying to get aggressive here, and he's got the Corrupting Potion taking away. He's got his Dark Seal stacking as well, already sitting on 5. A very, very scary LeBlanc.
Very scary LeBlanc, very scary everybody, pretty much, for eUnited. Even Deftly, though, he doesn't have a lot of kills on the board for himself, has built up a decent CS advantage, and that's in a melee versus melee support, Caitlyn versus Ashe lane, so he's got an advantage where he might not necessarily have gotten them in the first place. But now Dandy getting jumped on here by Sir T, who's kind of waiting to brush this, and those Zeyzals there to help lock him up. Dandy slices him down. A third kill for the Kha'Zix as an Enchanted Crystal Arrow will land onto Bayano, and now Zeyzal trying to get in position for another Pulverize. The exhaust is down on Fabi. Flash! Pulverize! Headbutt back into the rest of his team. Fabi's not going to live through this one. Almost gets a kill onto Dandy, but the complete or perfect game is still alive for eUnited.
Licorice deciding he doesn't need to TP down into that. They did have a ward in the jungle there that they might have been able to join in on, but instead wraps around the mid lane, makes sure that the Syndra does not feel safe there, which buys GBM space to grab that turret, and goes also for the solo kill. Licorice wrapping around a second time.
Oh, the headbutt Pulverize is flashed away, but the Righteous Glory flash lockdown is there for Licorice. Didn't quite have the feast up yet, so he decides to pick up the kill with a Feral Scream.
I was wondering why he didn't just nom him down real quick like that. Maybe could have waited a second longer. Here we also see the fact that eUnited, I don't even remember when we talked about it, but they grabbed the Rift Herald, dropped that one down the bot lane, and grabbed the second turret of that lane. That's all outers down now as well. 4 turrets in total for eUnited.
One of the things we were touching upon with the change in 7-14 was the fact that lethality scales, now that you have the level advantages, and now you have a Kha'Zix with this Duskblade of Drakthar picked up.
That's what I was going to hit on. We have our first 7-14 Duskblade of the North American Challenger Series. You might see a lot more of these if this game goes long enough. I'm sure Jace will grab one as well. Yeah,
but Jace is at a disadvantage here, where the Kha'Zix at a huge advantage. I was going to say that, you know, lethality saw a buff where you increase in level and the lethality increases. I didn't see in the patch notes where eUnited increases in lethality with their level either.
Yeah, they're getting a lot more dangerous today. We see Licorice already up at 3,500 health just about. It's going to keep going up as he eats people. I don't know how Big God Jackals plans on getting through all that health.
Well, they got Big Gods in their name, but they're the ones that are going up against the giant Cho'Gath here. But in the bottom side of the map, they're still trying to make proactive plays, but they just don't have the vision control. We saw Sir T trying to go for a body slam onto Danny, but utilizing the Kha'Zix invisibility, the Void Assault, just to get him out of there. And they were able to pick up a kill on the jungler who, I mean, at this point, Sir T is kind of the only person that can make plays happen on Big God.
And I do want to say that I appreciate them going for that because they don't have good vision control, and they probably will never have good vision control when you're this far behind. It's so hard to walk in and make sure that you can get some wards down on the camp, and then you know that Dandy's not down there, and then you go for that play safely. Obviously, that's the correct methodology to making a play, but when you're so far behind, sometimes you do have to cut steps out, and one of them is get vision control, and you just kind of hope that he's not down there in that brush, and you can make that 3v2 play. So I appreciate that Big God's Jackals is still trying to be aggressive. It's just unfortunate that they are so far behind that they can't really do it the correct way.
10,000 gold disadvantage for Big Gods, and they've lost 2 dragons at the same time. So that's going to be the side of eUnited, continuing to pressure mercilessly on all facets of Summoner's Rift. Top lane winds up going down to GBM as he utilizes that LeBlanc split push way more effectively than his Talia in the last best of series you saw between these two teams. They got the 1-3-1 split push down pat now. Last series they played against Big God's Jackals, we said the Gnar pick coming in from Licorice. They didn't necessarily play around that one to its fullest potential, and that's how Big Gods got back into this one. But now they got GBM as a side lane threat as well, and it's really difficult for Big Gods to mount the comeback.
Yeah, they also didn't have 11,000 gold lead last series, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true. Not at 20 minutes.
Yeah, definitely not at 20 minutes. So a little bit easier to close out here if you are GBM on this LeBlanc pick. Sometimes when it's an even game, you have to be a little bit concerned about people collapsing on you, and if you don't execute correctly, will you lose the 1v1? At this point, they're so far ahead, they basically don't have to worry about much of anything. You see Licorice just run under the turret, baits out RF Legendary's Blade of the Rune King there, and just dips back into the jungle. Didn't even see his health bar dip.
Yeah, well, he's got the full combo going on, the Righteous Glory, the Warmog's Armor, and he's going for that Gargoyle Stone Plate next up, so that's going to be, you know, that ridiculous Cho'Gath ultimate.
Yeah, I was about to say, well, another thing that we mentioned with this ultimate was that it scales off your health now, and there was a video out not too long ago, hit the front page of Reddit. I think it was Valkyrin who made it, where he pops Gargoyle Stone Plate active to get the giant bonus health combined with the bonus health of his ultimate, and you stack all this other health, and you end up basically doing 1 billion true damage to anybody. So you're going to see Licorice actually legitimately start one-shotting people with the ultimate.
Zazel looks like he might be caught out, but he's going to use the Unbreakable Will. Gets himself very tanky because that one's got some extra damage reduction on it now. Fabi in the meantime trying to go onto Dandy, who's exhausted in the backline, but Licorice is teleported into the middle of everybody with GBM. The first kill gets picked up by Licorice as he doesn't even need the feast to take down Sir T. Pick and Will's going to die on the backside of the fight as now RF Legendary's going to fall. 14 kills to 0. eUnited are destroying Big Gods.
Big Gods looking for anybody to open a fight up on. Of course, it's Zazel, who is that Alistar. We talk about some small buffs to his ultimate there, able to use it to survive that fight early on, buys enough time for the rest of eUnited to collapse in on it. Almost got GBM down, did get low, but couldn't finish him off. eUnited walks away with a 3-0, and they're going to take off this Baron as well.
So immediate turn on to Baron here from eUnited. They pretty much got everything they can need in order to try to close this game out against Big God's Jackals for a 15,000 gold lead now almost. That the Baron buff has gone down. 14 kills to 0, double dragons. They got the Baron buff to push down, and Big God's Jackals, they don't even have some members in double. Well, now they do. Bayana finally hitting level 10.
Hey, there we go. Minor victory. So here we see, Zazel trying to camp that pink brush and maybe, or pink ward and start something off. He gets jumped on, but he pops that ultimate as well as getting that Mastery Shield. Comes out relatively healthy on the other end. Licorice just runs in as that big frontliner, able to chunk down multiple people below. That big chunk of damage was from LeBlanc, I believe. It looked like Cho'Gath's ultimate was on cooldown, so that was not actually his ultimate. I assume it would do more damage than that.
At this point, yeah. Ooh, RF Legendary. Just going to get chopped to pieces by eUnited.
Yeah, it's really hard to play a squishy champion like Jace when you're this far behind, and it's not like eUnited lacks engage tools. They have an Alistar. They have a big Cho'Gath, and you see them just pressuring super hard around this turret. Zazel's starting to get pretty low, though.
Yeah, he doesn't look to be very afraid, though. Dandy, though, is going to get jumped on by the Syndra. He
goes
will
down.
end up falling. No more perfect game, Mark. But eUnited are charging into the base of Big God's Jackals. They've gotten 1 kill, but there's only 1 member left alive, and I don't even know if Bayana's going to survive for long enough. He will make it back to the summoner platform, but a mid lane inhibitor is going to go down for eUnited.
eUnited does not look like they want to back off either, continuing forward with this Baron-empowered push. They are missing Dandy, but the other members of the team are extremely fed as well. How are they going to get through Licorice? You see him just eat that Shock Blast and take almost no damage. They take the first Nexus turret down. Looks like this is going to be game.
Yeah, it looks like it here. 24 minutes into the game, eUnited will storm the base of Big God's Jackals, and with still plenty of time to spare on their Baron buff, the first Nexus looks like it will fall this best-of-5 series. Zazel's going to go in. They're going to pad a little bit of their KDA stats, but once RF Legendary flashes away, the Nexus will be the main focus. 18 kills to 1. eUnited take game 1.
A dominating performance overall, almost a perfect game until that last kill by Dandy during that push gives that one up while he was diving. It's fine overall. I'm sure they're not worried about that in the playoffs of all things. Much more concerned about actually picking up that W. And I mean, though he did get the kill over, I think you have to look at Dandy for kind of the MVP of that game. The early kill onto the Grogish shuts him down. Repeat gank into the mid lane, gets a kill, snowballing his split pusher, ganks up on the top side. All of that was insane.
Yeah, we heard from Definitely just after their series against Big God Jackals last week saying, like, yeah, it was a little messy. We still 2-0'd Big Gods, but it wasn't as clean as we wanted to. The Koreans were working on their visas. So we didn't have a lot of practice time. This is with 1 week of full practice time and a brand new patch, and Dandy and GBM both having standout performances.
Yeah, luckily they do get to build off some existing synergy. It's not like this is their first week of practice, of course. But yeah, they adapted to the patch extremely well. You see them bust out the Cho'Gath pick, as well as the Kazakhs, 2 champions that are going to benefit from the changes, as well as bringing out the LeBlanc, a different look than we've seen out of GBM.
Yeah, and specifically coming out of that Kazakhs pickup, they got such huge early game advantages that let GBM's LeBlanc really run away with mid lane and let that Cho'Gath get ahead of the Jace. I mean, from early on, there's the first blood in the jungle, but then they started diving towers as early as level 4.
Yeah, I mean, you see early on, like we said, he already killed the Syndra once, getting LeBlanc ahead, then he shuts down the top side. You get this teleport back out of the Jace when he goes into lane. He instantly runs down bot lane, drops a ward to set up another TP play, then he influences the bot lane as well, makes a repeat gank up on the top side. Now the Licorice is far enough ahead that he can basically push in a wave whenever. The one play that Big God Jackals tried to force down the bot side, he was sitting in this brush waiting for it. He anticipated Sir T face checking him, chunks him out really hard early on, and you can basically count all of the early game advantages in some way were influenced by Dandy early on.
Yeah, and the good thing for eUnited, though, is that they're able to hold on to those advantages and just ride them out towards the end stages of the game. They were able to play around the fact that Licorice was very strong, but also GBM on the LeBlanc pickup. Not only was he just making Pika move pretty much a non-factor, but he was moving around the map. He wasn't necessarily participating in a ton of kills, but he was putting pressure in areas. He was getting top lane towers pretty much for free when there were tier 2 towers. And there was nobody that could match up to him in the 1v1.
And that's the thing, I think, is you get some shades of Samsung White Dandy with this game overall, just because that's what he was known for, was just being so aggressive in the enemy jungler's face all the time, turning plays with the rest of his team. He was always well coordinated in dives, and a lot of these were the kind of things that he had to team up with somebody else to do. It wasn't just, oh, I'm on a solo mission, I don't need to worry about my communication, I'm just going to go make a play. The first one kind of like that, but the dive coordinating with GBM, the dive topside with Licorice, and then also the TP play bot side coordinating with Licorice as well. Very impressive stuff to see out of them, because this is a really team game. Even though it looks like a massive snowball and you want to point to just individual outplays, most of it was very intelligent stuff out of eUnited.
Yeah, and they played aggressive, but they played intelligently with it. And the fact of the matter is, even though Big God Jackals tried to make things happen as the game was going on, they didn't just kind of roll over and die. No matter how proactive they tried to play, they were too far behind to really capitalize on anything. And in the game-ending fight, it just holds true. They try to get a pick on Zazel, but he stays alive for so long that all these members join up from eUnited.
Another champion on 7-14, eUnited using right away. This Alistar pick, it's always been extremely tanky with that ultimate. They try to open up onto him, desperate for a target. They can't quite do it. The wards are obviously behind them. eUnited were so far ahead. They, of course, have deep vision. That opens up a teleport flank for Licorice. GBM comes flying in the side as well. Dandy was also wrapping around. They just jump right onto the backline of Big God Jackals. Relatively immobile with the Jason Syndra picks, and they go down extremely fast.
All right, it was a minute and a half later. The game wound up ending, and they suffered their first death of the game that wasn't an execute.
There we go.
We're going to be headed for a break. There's more Challenger coming right up, so when we return, we'll see if Big Gods can tie the series or if eUnited jumps out to a 2-game lead. Dandy's gonna get leapt on there. Sir T has to flash away with a flash follow from Dandy. First blood secured for Kazakhs. Is he gonna flash after? He will,
oh,
but
the minion.
He changed the minion, and Pikamu's gonna be able to. Oh, he goes back in! United are going to be continuing this proactive play. There's a mountain dragon on the map, and GBM getting super aggressive here. Now Dandy getting jumped on here by Sir T, who's gonna wait in the brush for some of those Azels there to help block him up. Flash, pulverize, headbutt back into the rest of his team. Fabby's not gonna live through this one. How about pulverize flash away, but the righteous glory flash lockdown is there for Licorice. Dandy, though, is going to get jumped on by the Syndra. He will wind up falling. No more perfect game, Mark. But eUnited are charging into the base of Big God Jack.